And now let's bring in my panel, MSNBC political analyst and former Senator Claire McCaskill, Miles Taylor, former Chief of Staff of the Department of Homeland Security. He's currently an advisor to Represent Us, a nonpartisan organization fighting against political corruption, and Alencia Johnson, political strategist and senior advisor to the Harris campaign. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to come to you first, Alencia, here at the table. What I was talking to Pete about is the reality that it is a very edited version of Donald Trump that exists in the world, that a lot of people's information bubble, that a lot of people who are in that right-wing information bubble. I want to give an example. Donald Trump did this barbershop interview. The black guy from the comfy couch in the morning is doing these barbershop conversations. And here's how CNN reported on it. Fox News, Trump has been complaining about 60 Minutes editing Kamala Harris, but they edited Trump's rambling answers and false claims in his barbershop interview. One of the most telling parts of the dialogue began when an audience member asked Trump about finding a way to eliminate federal taxes in the future. On Fox, Trump was shown immediately answering affirmatively, "There is a way." But the response from Trump actually came more than 7 minutes later, after Trump and Mr. Jones brought up other topics, including inheritance, the Keystone Pipeline, Ronald Reagan, Russia, transgender sports players. Now I'm going to play that for you. Here is what people saw on Fox if they watched the town hall. Take a listen.
My question is, with all this extra revenue we're going to be bringing into the country, so do you believe at some point in time we could find a way, once the country's back on its feet and getting enough revenue and paid off our debt, do you think it's possible to find a way to eliminate federal taxes?
There is a way. There is a way.
Okay. Now here's, I'm not going to play all 7 minutes of it, but here's about a minute of the actual answer.
Well, the part of the question was federal taxes in itself. What are you going to do for
we're cutting taxes. So we're cutting taxes. She's raising taxes. You saw that.
And Mr. President, will there be, so you already passed tax cuts in the last.
They want to end them.
Will there be an additional tax cut?
Oh, yeah, we're cutting them further. You saw that. Because we're using what's underground. We're using our wealth. Again, energy is so big.
But I'm sorry, I'm assuming that my initial question I didn't properly ask it, so I can have a quick second to do so. When it comes to federal taxes, I know we're going to bring back, I'm sure you're going to start back up the pipeline, the Keystone Pipeline, which is going to generate an abundance of revenue. Also, with the tariffs that you've spoken of, that in itself is going to bring a lot of money to the country.
100%.
Do you believe at some point...
tariff? Don't listen to the fake news.
I don't.
The word or Wall Street jerks or the Wall Street Journal, because they don't get it.
I mean, if your grandpa talked like that, you would start looking for a good convalescent home.
Absolutely. You would get him, force for him to retire, quite frankly. And it's actually disgusting that this is what Fox News wants to do. But it's not surprising because they did it actually in the middle of Vice President Harris's interview, where she had to correct them on what Donald Trump has actually said. Fox News is going to go down in history as the news outlet that normalized this extremely dangerous, not only rhetoric, but behavior from Donald Trump. It is disgusting to see that they continue to try to make sure, they want to make sure that he wins, but actually, if we remember in 2020, they were sued for going along with his plot. And so it's interesting to figure out what is their motive here and watering down what he is saying and trying to normalize his, quite frankly, his rambling and his word salads that we can't even quite make sense of, right? We can't even report on Donald Trump's potential policy because he doesn't talk about policy, and then they edit it this way. And thank goodness for MSNBC for doing real journalism. And we have to decipher through the truth here, because these tapes that they're showing us are not the truth.
I want to also note that the Atlanta black barbershop owner says he's lost business since the Trump event. Everything Trump touches dies. This is Tyler Perry, who's just stepped up. Atlanta, in some ways, the king of Atlanta. Let me get Claire, because of his huge movie studio that's down there. Let me go to you real quick, Claire, because the task that Kamala Harris has to accomplish is that she is taking I rarely quote Van Jones. I'm going to quote him now. She's taking a different exam than Donald Trump. She has to be super specific and do everything perfect. She has to perform perfectly. Everything has to be perfect. Whereas Donald Trump gets graded on a hell of a curve. So she's now trying to make her closing argument. What does she need to accomplish?
Well, I think she needs to keep emphasizing that she's looking at you and he's looking in a mirror. She cares about you. He cares about himself. That's a contrast that resonates, I think, with the majority of Americans. And here's the thing. You know what's really weird about this election, Joy? I've given this a lot of thought because I don't know about you, but everywhere I go, people go, how can it be this close?
Yeah.
How can it be this close? 1/3 of the people who are voting for Donald Trump don't believe a word he says. And they're voting for him because they don't believe him. They don't believe he's going to be a dictator on day one. They don't believe he's going to use the military to go after his political enemies. They don't believe he's going to put a 20% tariff across the board. They believe he's going to cut their taxes and cut government regulation, and that's what they care about. And they don't believe any of the rest of the stuff he says. Shame on them. 2/3 of the people voting for Donald Trump think everything he says is the gospel, that somehow Keystone Pipeline is going to generate revenue for America, that somehow that the tariffs, which are just going to increase their prices on everyday goods when it's across the board and not surgical and strategic, that somehow that is going to make their lives better and somehow bring in so much money they don't have to pay federal taxes. I mean, it's ludicrous. And the 1/3 that believe he's lying about everything know how ludicrous this is. They are in on the joke, and they're going, go ahead, Trump. Con those people. Be a carnival barker. Make them believe that you can remove the taxes on Social Security and everything else you're saying and maybe never have federal taxes. Go for it, guy, because you're going to cut our taxes and make sure we stay billionaires. And meanwhile, Elon Musk is handing out $1 million checks to prove to everybody that you can buy an election if you're the richest man in the world.
Yeah. I mean, and Miles, that is really what Republican politics has come down to. It is sort of an endless grift. It is conning ordinary people who are just concerned about the price of eggs and milk and saying, no, no, no. If you just send a deposit to this bank account, we'll write you back a check for $5,000. It's an old phone scam that Donald Trump is constantly running on people, and they're buying it. Donald Trump's one of his latest emissions from his Truth Social. 60 Minutes should be immediately taken off the air. Election interference. They should lose their license. It's the biggest scandal in broadcast history. Why? Because they edited the Kamala Harris interview, but they edited a coherent interview to make it shorter, to fit into an hour. Fox is editing Donald Trump to make him sound like he doesn't have dementia. And yet people are buying this scam because, to Claire's point, he's selling them this dream that they can never pay taxes again and it'll be paid by some magical tariff. Why is this so effective?
Well, Joy, I think we've had a couple of guests kind of hint at that tonight. I mean, Secretary Buttigieg and Senator McCaskill talking about how extraordinary this is, that it is a coin flip election, given everything that we've witnessed really over the past 8 years, everything we know about the former president. How are we in a 50-50 situation? And certainly you can talk about the former president, you can talk about Republican politics, but there's even something more deeper and fundamental there that I think even if Donald Trump loses this election, I'm not sure that we have reckoned with yet. And that gives me a lot of pause. And for folks who want the former president to lose, there is still on the back end of that an enormous amount of anger from his supporters that's ingrained in the echo chamber that they're in, that I worry about from a national security and public safety standpoint being unleashed. I mean, we can't soon forget this is an election cycle that has seen multiple assassination attempts. And by the way, not just against the former president. There was an FBI disrupted plot this year against President Biden in Utah to assassinate him. We are in uncharted territory. And Secretary Buttigieg said that earlier. I mean, this is, we always say every election cycle that it's a historic election. I was at an event tonight with Senator Mark Warner, and he made the joke that we say that every single cycle, this is the most important election to vote. Well, this is that most historic election, but the reasons are really fundamentally as a people. It's not that the election is a coin flip. It's that we as a country are divided 50-50 in the firmest way that we've been.
Indeed. Let me just note that a suspect in a shooting up a Harris campaign office in Tempe, Arizona, was apparently preparing for a mass casualty act, according to prosecutors. That is the situation we're in. People who don't believe elections are real are shooting up campaign offices.